Hello, I'm David Tickner, the Chief Executive of the Civil Service Retirement Fellowship, and I'm delighted to welcome you to 60 Voices, which is a special podcast we launched to celebrate the 60th anniversary of the Civil Service Retirement Fellowship. In this series, we'll be sharing the fascinating stories and personal reflections of former civil servants as they look back on their careers and the impact they had on the nation. 60 Voices aims to conserve and preserve these important work memories. From the challenges they faced to the memorable moments that define their work, each episode explores a unique personal insight into the history of the UK's civil service and the people who work within it. So whether you're a former colleague or someone interested in public service, we invite you to join us as we explore the voices behind decades of dedication, service, and legacy. Joining me on the journey, as usual for our podcast, is my friend and co-host Denise Headley. Denise is the CSRF's Deputy Chief Executive and has an extensive background in broadcasting and commentary, and she runs her own successful weekly podcast on politics and world affairs. So nice to see you, Dee.
Lovely to be here, and thank you so much, and good to see you, Neil.
Yeah, and to this episode, we're delighted to welcome Neil Keskar. Neil is the chair of our East London and SW Essex group, and has had a career that included both the civil service and the army. So a big welcome to you, Neil. And we're going to kick off with a very easy question. What made you choose the civil service as a career?
The choice was more or less forced on me, actually. When I came out of the army, I went on what the army used to call a resettlement board. And at that board, there was a representative from the police, from the civil service, and also from a firm, a private sector firm. And at the end of the interview, I was expecting to sort of, all of the people who were on that board made me an offer of a job.
Wow.
And I expected to hear from them in about a week or so's time. But I never got any replies. I was getting quite anxious, and my demob leave, was coming to an end. And when the demob leave comes to an end, you're out of the army, so you're unemployed. Yeah. So I thought, well, this is getting a bit too close. Then at the very last minute, I think on the Thursday before the Monday of the following week, I got a letter from the civil service offering me, confirming that I'd got the job as a clerical officer. So I promptly took up the offer. And then, as things always happen, no sooner had I accepted the offer from the civil service than the police offered me a job as well. But by that time, it was too late. I was in the civil service as a clerical officer.
It could have been a very different path for you if they'd been quick on them up. Was the civil service, I mean, you don't have to answer this, but was that of all the options you had when you left, was that your preferred route, or were you fairly ambiguous?
I was sort of, I was open to all offers. Yeah, I wasn't necessarily looking at civil service, because one of the things that people had told me, the pay is not very good, they said, in the civil service. It's a good career, but the pay is really pretty poor, they said. And when I was leaving the army, I was a sergeant, so I was and just before I left, we'd got a hefty pay rise. So I was at that time earning a princely sum of £20 a week. And so people said to me, well, civil service is a good career, but you won't get paid much. Yeah, so I said, all right, well, you haven't got much of a choice. Nobody's going to offer me £20 a week to start off with. That's what I thought. And then,
question, Neil, that when you transitioned into the civil service, was it very similar to the army in terms of the way it was working? And
funny you should ask that. In fact, it really was. There was the instead of the rank structure, you had the grade structure. I had an EO, executive officer, that I reported to. We were our little section, myself, another clerical assistant, and our EO, Gordon Swainston. We were, a little team, and we reported to our HEO, Andrew London, and that's how it went. So there was this grade structure, which was really similar to the rank structure in the army. So in that sense, you're quite right. I found the civil service very much like the army, And then again, like the army, you could progress your way up the grade structure. Just because in
when
the
you
army, sort of, you
think yourself
progress
as
your way up
moving
the
up?
rank structure. You start as a trooper, and then you're a lance corporal,
Yeah.
It's the same thing in the civil service. You start as a clerical officer, and then you go on to, in the fullness of time, you become executive officer, and then you work your way up. So I found that
Neil, can I
quite
just
similar,
ask a
actually.
question? That presumably, because of the fact you were ex-military, the obvious route was for you to go straight into the Ministry of Defence because of the link between the
Yeah.
military.
I had had an offer by DHSS as well. Or rather, I had gone for an interview with DHSS. The civil service person that was on my resettlement board, the
Yeah.
civil service person there had actually sort of put me in touch with both the Ministry of Defence, because that was the obvious choice, but also the Department of Health and Social Security, DHSS. And I remember going for an interview with them as well. And they said they would get in touch with me, but then it was the ministry, as it happened, it was the Ministry of Defence that were the first to offer me a job. But I did have the option, if I wanted, to go to DHSS. And to me, they were both civil service. I had no sort of special preference for one or the other. But
But the
Ministry of Defence made more sense to me.
MOD, I say the Ministry of Defence though has got still that synergy between MOD civil servants and the military. So you would have had
Absolutely.
that. Presumably, even when you were working in the civil service, you still had some engagement, did you, with the British Army, but as a civil servant rather than
No, the thing is, David, when I was in the army, every so often I would hear about officers who had been posted to the War Office.
yeah.
I never knew what the War Office was. It was only when I came out of the army and joined the Ministry of Defence that's when I learned that what the army used to call the War Office was actually this Ministry of Defence, which had so many civil servants in there, and also some sections which were all military. In fact, I met a couple of former officers from my regiment when I was working as a civil servant. I remember I met my old OC, Major Lineker. I was in the canteen upstairs one day, and suddenly Major Lineker turns up. He said, he was so pleased to see me. We went out for a meal and everything, for a drink. So yeah, yes, the Ministry of Defence is actually is a mixed environment. There are some sections which are entirely military, like I think the research side of it, for example. There's a lot of military officers there, sort of advising the scientists, and then there is procurement is entirely civilian, So yes, Ministry of Defence is mixed, civilian and military.
And were you working out of their headquarters in Whitehall then? Is that where you?
No, I was sent to a place called St. Christopher House in Southwark.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was a place for procurement, and I happened to be in defence procurement at that time.
Very good.
Yeah.
I was just interested about this resettlement board because I never heard of that before. And the reason I think it's interesting is because it clearly shows that there was a link, an active link between keeping good personnel within certain areas of government. So you'd gone into the army and then you'd moved into this other space and you had different sections of the government. Like you said, I think there was the police, there was the civil service, there was a private company. And I just think that's quite an interesting way of maintaining personnel. But I imagine we don't have anything like that now. Do we? I imagine it's not.
I have a feeling resettlement boards are still there. The army looks after its people very well, actually, even when they're leaving. And that was the idea. When you were leaving, they didn't just want to let you go and leave you to your own devices in the big wide world. It is quite frightening when you're coming out of the army, in a way, because the army looks after you so well.
How long was you in there, Neil? Could I ask?
Sorry?
How long were you in the army?
Well, I only did 9 years. I didn't do 22 years like some other people. I did 9 years. But even so, when you're coming out of the army, it's a bit unsettling because, the big fear is, what if I'm unemployed? While you're in the army, you're never unemployed.
Yeah.
And also, while you're in the army, it doesn't matter where you are. If you get into any kind of problem, if you have any, say you're on leave or something, and you have any problems, all you got to do is to report back to the nearest army establishment, and you're okay. That's how that's how good the army is for looking after you. So you have
It is very, yeah, that is very true. I mean, interestingly, one of our newest groups, the Glasgow group that opened last week, the volunteer coordinator is ex-military and had a similar path to you, works in the army, then also in the civil service. And since he left, he was telling me that in terms of the charity sector, the military has something like 2,000 charities running in the UK that are specifically linked to looking after former or serving military personnel. So, I mean, my dad was ex-army. He was an army chaplain. So I grew up as an army kid, etc.
Oh, right.
So,
Did
so
you
I
grow up
know
in
that I know.
BAOR?
Yes,
With
he
the
was
Army of the Rhine?
stationed. Yeah, he was all over BAOR.
I think people who were children, service children in BAOR, I think they're called BAOR brats.
They are. We were called brats. That's very true. That is very true. Although we weren't, my sister and I went to school in BAOR. We were in boarding school in the UK because in those days they had what was called a boarding school allowance, where they
they do. And
we still
you know
have
what,
that.
David, that boarding school arrangement really works well for children of other ranks.
Yeah.
But you find they go to a boarding school, when they come back, they're officer material. Yeah.
So when you joined the MOD, obviously the environment was not alien to you because obviously you had the similar structure to how you had in the army. But what were you say you started in compliance, but I think your career then evolved into information technology. Did it
That's
not?
right.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I joined as a clerical officer.
Yeah.
And I think within about 10 months, I saw a so-called Defense Council instruction that used to come out in the MOD. And it said that they were looking for people to be trained as computer specialists. And you could put your name forward. And then you would have to go through an assessment to see your aptitude for computer work. And for that assessment, you had to go to the Civil Service Commission. At that time, there was a Civil Service Commission in Savile Row. So you had to go there, and you went there, and you were there for a day, and they gave you all sorts of intelligence tests. And at the end of it, they said, "Okay, we'll let you know whether you have the aptitude and you pass the assessment." And then about a week later, I was told that I'd passed the assessment. I'd been accepted for training as a computer specialist, and from then on, and also that with that came promotion to executive officer grade. So after that, then I went on a number of, a whole lot of courses. They sent me on a programming course. They sent me on an assembler programming course. They sent me on a COBOL programming course. And then after about another 6 months, I was actually offered a computer job at RAF Hendon.
Oh,
where they had a big computer for the Royal Air Force supply control system. So then I went to, so I left the defense procurement job that I had in St. Christopher House, and I went to RAF Hendon.
And how was that for you? I mean, in terms of an environment, was it a different type of environment?
Again, it didn't bother me too much at all. In fact, that was even more mixed as civilian and servicemen at RAF Hendon. My boss, Bernie Sharp, was a squadron leader, and I had some sergeants working for me on my team. So I went there, as a EO IT specialist to work on the operations side of the new computer system. In fact, when I went there, and this is typical, I went there because the RAF Supply Control Center was changing over from an old computer, AEI 1010 computer, to a brand new ICL System 4 computer. So I myself, and I remember with me, there was another chap, Brian Jones. We were the first two IT specialists to be posted to RAF Hendon. When we went there, it was just Brian, myself, and our boss, Alan Graydon. There was no computer there, no nothing. It was all waiting to be installed. So we went there, and then Bernie Sharp come along as, the squadron leader who was going to be in charge of my team. So it was a similar kind of a thing to what I was used to. And that mix of service and civilian worked quite well. You know,
Can I ask you, Neil, the system that they were employing, the new system that they were deploying, what was that for, and how did that impact on the work that they were doing? Because I don't know about what these systems are. What were they there to do?
well, no. Well, what it was, the RF supply control system had been computerized in the mid-60s, right? And the computer system that they were using was installed at RF Hendon, but it was an old AEI 1010 machine. And in 1972, they decided that they wanted to upgrade that system to a more modern computer system. So therefore, they brought in a ICO system, so-called System 4 computer system. And that was a much sort of much more efficient computer system. It was a much more modern as well, you know. So that was going to be installed at RF Hendon. It was going to take over from the old system in due course. But when the new ICO System 4 system was installed at RF Hendon, initially, of course, the new programs had to be developed for the new system. The operation had to be sort of, you know, bedded down and that sort of thing. So before the new system could take over, there had to be a lot of preparatory work to be done. A lot of it consisted of software development. You had to write new programs, you know. You couldn't use the same program. You couldn't transport the old programs onto the new system. So you had to write new systems, new programs, and all that took about 3 years. But when
So you
Yeah,
watch
for the duration. Oh, sorry, David. Did you state
No, go on,
the
go on.
duration of this transition to the new system? Because was it for procurement? Was it for
part of it was procurement, it was supply control. So part of
supply
it was
control? Oh,
procurement,
okay.
and part of it was inventory control.
Okay, so now I get what it was for.
Yeah, so it's all about RF supply. Well, anything from actually, it was anything from sellotape to aircraft engines, all the parts, all that, you know, supply of all of those parts, all the equipment that the RF needs, that was controlled by this RF supply control center and this RF supply control computer system, System 4, as it was called.
So were you responsible for writing the programs, Neil, as well as obviously ensuring the changeover of the computer systems? Did you get involved with the whole?
Not me entirely.
No, but you were involved in that process.
I was involved in that. Initially, I was on computer operations. There's another. Let me tell you a story about computer operations, right? In those days, in 1970, there was a kind of a social hierarchy in the computer community. Bottom of the pile were the computer operators, then the computer programmers, and then systems analysts, right? That was a hierarchy. So I remember, I told you about Brian Jones, the other chap who was with me. When we went to do our computer courses, we said to them, look, you know, we're doing all these computer courses. We've proved that we're good enough for programmers. So we don't want to go on operations. We want to be programmers. You know, we don't want to start at the bottom of the pile. So anyway, they said, of course, yeah, you're programmers. You know, you pass your aptitude test, you're programmers. Of course, you get programmers. When it comes to it, there are no postings for programmers. The only people they wanted was operators for this new system, System 4 at RF Hendon. And they told her, but look, no, actually, listen, it is operations, but actually it needs a lot of programming knowledge. And
They were selling it to you, Neil.
Yeah. And Brian and I were really quite hacked off there. We took it because there was no other postings. I think the only other posting was, I don't know, Bath or somewhere like that, where we didn't want to go. So
was the environment you were working? I mean, obviously you were very much in at the ground level with the evolution of computers becoming more important to work environment.
Yeah.
Was there a lot of resistance from people who, obviously bearing in mind this is quite new, were people resistant to switching over to use computers if you have to do a lot of persuading of hearts and minds to people to embrace using computers, or were people quite open?
No, there wasn't, because I think this is where the Ministry of Defense was quite an enlightened employer. They didn't, when they brought in new computers, they didn't sack people. Just for the sake of it. first of all, they gave them an opportunity to train onto the new computer system, acquire a new skill. That was the first thing they offered them. And then, in a way, I think within the civil service, if there are to be some jobs to be done away with because of the arrival of computer, within the civil service, there can always be, people transferred to some other department where there is, need for civil servants. So I don't think there was that much of a resistance within the civil service, to the introduction of computers, because, as I say, the Ministry of Defense, or civil service probably as a whole, was quite an enlightened employer. And they didn't just sack people. That was it.
How long did you stay in RAF Hendon, Neil?
I stayed at RAF Hendon till 1979.
So you did 9 years there?
Yeah.
And then what did you do after that?
After that, I did a computer training job at Empress State Building, still within the Ministry of Defense, but I did a job as a computer instructor, trainer.
Oh,
Very good.
right.
Yeah.
You did like a sideways move. First you were implementing change. Now you're educating about change.
That's right. And there was a little promotion in it as well. So.
But you're getting more than £20 a week now.
Yeah. Then I was getting more than £20 a week. Yeah, so I did that job. And then I went into, after the training job, I went on a project that was going to bring in at that time, in 83 time, office automation was a new thing.
So what did you say?
Office automation.
All right.
In other words, bringing computers into the office, using PCs. 84, that's when the PCs first arrived. And so then I went on a project within the Ministry of Defense, which was going to introduce office automation to the whole of the Ministry of Defense. And I worked on that project in 1990. And then I left because then, for some strange reason, by 1990, the ministers and government was sending strange messages to civil servants, telling them, "Oh, you're not good enough for this. This is the sort of thing that should be done by private sector.
Oh.
And that this should be done by consultant." So I ended up sort of having two consultants working for me. And then I joined their firm because there was a lot more money.
Very shrewd move, I think. But I mean, it does that. I think that cycle between ministerial engagement with the civil service has happened in time immemorial, Neil. I think it goes round and round and round and round and round.
Yeah.
In terms of, I mean, I've been with the organization 17 years, and I've heard that the civil service, I mean, they've had 3 main reviews, which fundamentally have said we need to embrace more of the private sector in terms of how we do things. We can learn from the private sector. And then they realized that obviously costs more money. It's not quite as efficient because it is a unique being, the civil service.
I mean, the scale, for example.
Exactly. And
sorry,
go on, Dee.
In that period of time, effectively, you worked for the civil service for nearly 20 years.
Yeah.
And could you give me a little bit of indication about like the social activities? Because some of the people we've spoken to in the 60 Voices podcast series, they talked about activities where people would go out. I think they used to have like wine clubs. Some used to have photography clubs. Some used to have theatre groups, or there would be like little buildings downstairs where people could socialize in the evening. Was socializing part of that whole experience? And did you have a lot of socializing within the civil service?
It was, but because at RAF Hendon, the socializing was along the sort of same kind of basis that you get in the army, It revolves around the messes. So, there are functions in the officers' mess, and we as civilians were some members of the officers' mess there at RAF Hendon. So the social life there revolved around the mess. And I think that happens in all military establishments. The social life really revolves around the messes. But when I went to work at Northumberland House, in central London, then yes, then there was these different societies that you could join. But I don't think I did that a lot. But yes, there were all sorts of organizations that you could join. They were quite well organized in central London. But as I say, at RAF Hendon, social life revolved around their mess. and that is the military thing. When you're in the army, for example, when we were in Germany, we were only encouraged to sort of, stay within the mess and everything. We didn't get to know any Germans.
If I was going to say to you, what would you say was one of your biggest contributions as a civil servant? How would you say that you had been most impactful in your civil service career? It could be anything. What would you think? How would you say, look, what would be your proudest moment? How about that? Proudest moment.
I think I've said what my proudest moment was. One of the things when I was a trainer,
Yeah.
and when I came to the end of my sort of 3-year posting, there was I saw again another defense counterinsurrection offering bursary for studying for.
Oh yes, I mentioned it here. Because you done some training, didn't you? You got
a master's. It was a bursary for no, it was a London School of Economics.
I've been sponsored. You got a degree by the civil service, and you were given a bursary for full-time study, which is fabulous.
Right, yeah.
Tell us about that.
I know, and before that, I'd been studying with the Open University, right? So after I'd got this degree from the Open University, I got this bursary for a master's degree at the London School of Economics, and I was quite proud of that. And then when I finally got my degree after a year's course, again, the sort of getting my degree was a sort of a proud moment for me, both because I had achieved something myself, and as I say, as I imagine, I'd fulfilled the expectations that the Ministry of Defense had of me when they made me the offer of the bursary. So that was a proud moment for me, and I always wanted a master's degree.
The CSRF, the Civil Service Retirement Fellowship, is a charity set up for civil servants by civil servants. In 1960, Douglas Houghton MP highlighted the need for an organisation that supported retired civil servants offering friendship and companionship. 59 years later, we are still carrying on his dream. You can find out more about the CSRF at our website, www.csrf.org.uk. Why not sign up to become a digital donor for £3, less than the price of coffee? Or you may wish to volunteer. Contact us via the website.
So after you've got the masters, you did in conjunction with the day job, I guess. Did you were barracking?
No, I had a year off.
Oh, you had a year off to do masters?
Yeah, it was a full-time bursary.
Yeah.
I was a student. I think I was the oldest student in my class.
And how was being a student at LSE then? Did you enjoy that?
Yes, it was. Yeah, that was a different experience. I enjoyed it. Yeah, although I didn't fully participate in the same way as all the younger students were doing. I mean, I could see what was going on there. It was, it was sort of immersing yourself in academic life. Yeah, which I had an experience before. As I said, my first degree was with the Open University, which was a distance learning. Mind you, Open University do a brilliant job, or used to do a brilliant job anyway. Their degree was, the way they were organized for tuition, distance learning, was absolutely brilliant. And I think other people have followed them, but yeah. But my first degree was with the Open University, so it was a distance learning experience. I hadn't immersed myself, as I say, in academic life, or immerse myself in academia, as it were. So in that sense, that 1 year was really quite good for me.
But you've been very good at acquiring qualifications, though, Neil, because obviously you then went on to become a chartered engineer.
Oh yes, because
that was a natural progression, or was that something?
Yes, it was, because as a computer professional, I joined the British Computer Society.
Yeah.
Right, I was a member there. They accepted me as a member, and then the British Computer Society then I think became one of the organizations that belongs to the organization that awards the chartered engineering qualification. I forget what it is called now. But the British Computer Society, with a lot of other societies like, Institute of Mechanical Engineering, Institute of Electrical Engineering, they're all part of this Engineering Council, I think it's called.
All right.
And they award the qualification chartered engineer. So that's how I got my,
What does that actually mean? I mean, by being a chartered engineer, it's obviously an accolade. It's a
when I
recognition of the
joined
fact.
I think for a younger person to get that qualification is a good thing for, is a career enhancing thing for them.
Yeah.
But by the time I'd got it, I'd sort of, had a career in the IT. And I was about, 5 years or so from retiring. So it didn't give me a particular boost. But it's, it's something I value. I'm a chartered engineer. I'm something.
Oh, that's fabulous. Why shouldn't you value it? Could I just ask you, when you were approaching retirement, let's say around about the 5-year mark, what
Yeah.
kind of advice or support or what did they do to prep you for that period?
To be honest, that was, I suppose, the difference between working in the private sector and working in an organization like the army or the civil service. The private sector weren't, they weren't all that much welfare minded as the civil service and the army. I mean, I don't think I got sort of any kind of special courses or any kind of special help when I was retiring. I mean, the firm that I was working for, it was an American firm, and they were quite good. I mean, they paid their employees quite well. And in those days, one of the things which I now think was a good thing, given the way pensions are now, it was a final salary pension. So, in that sense, they sort of looked after me. But there was no kind of, pastoral care, as it were.
Mm.
I got that from the army and the civil service. Yeah.
So
were you-
sorry,
Sorry,
go on, after you.
I was going to say, were you aware of like the welfare associations there? Because the CSRF would have been active in those years while you were in the civil service, because it started, I think it's 1965, was it, D?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't aware of that. No, honestly.
Okay.
Much to my, my regret. Yeah. My shame. I was.
Oh, no. And how did you hear about us later?
Funny enough, it was after you retired that you begin to take an interest in all these, organizations. You don't want a complete break from, the past. So you
Yeah.
look for organizations that will, connect you with the past in some way. And I think that's what Civil Service Retirement Fellowship does.
Oh,
And the Pensioners Association. But I think that they've sort of, I don't know, I haven't heard much from Civil Service Pension. There should be a Civil Service Pensioners Association, I believe. There was
You
one.
mean the Pensioners Alliance?
So I was thinking,
Pensioners Alliance, yeah.
Pensioners Alliance.
Yeah.
The one that you join automatically when you retire. Their subscription is taken from your pension automatically.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
No, I didn't know that.
Yes, I've always wondered why the Civil Service Retirement Fellowship isn't sort of working on the same basis. Because when I
Well, we do have people.
retired, and on my first pension, I had to tick a box say, do you want to pay your Civil Service Pensioners Alliance subscriptions automatically, from your pension?
Oh,
I
right.
tick the box, and yeah.
We do actually have members who do that. So there is that facility to do that, to make a regular contribution. And we are promoted in the same way that the Alliance is with the pension scheme. But we used to have a lot more engagement with the preparation for people as they retired, which used to be dealt with by Capita up in Darlington. And they used to mail out leaflets of all of the organizations to anybody approaching retirement. But when it switched to my CSP, which was a sort of a mutual that was part owned by UK government, part owned by pension scheme holders, part owned by I think it's Ex-Affinity, or it had a business partner involved.
Yeah.
But they then moved to doing everything digitally. So because I remember when I first joined, we used to redesign our leaflet every year. We used to send thousands of them up to Darlington, and they'd be automatically included in all the mailings. But that's all changed. I mean, they do have our digital leaflets, and they do include us on the website. But obviously, that's a wider challenge that all of the welfare bodies have faced over recent, probably 5 to 10 years. Is obviously what can we do to increase our impact within the civil service? And obviously, Denise and I have been involved this year and last year, I think 3rd year in a row. They have what's called CS Charities Week, which is a good opportunity for all of the organisations, so us, the Charity for Civil Servants, and the Sports Council, to obviously promote the fact that they are there for civil servants, and obviously also being involved with the civil service live events. They've been very helpful. And the Ministry of Defence, actually, when we've got a new category this year to try and engage serving civil servants as donors, called a digital donor. So they can make a small contribution every year to support the running of the charity, but we keep in touch with them with e-newsletters and emails, etc. And when we launched that via a press release through government communications at the beginning of the year, the first 10 people to sign up all came from MOD. So the Ministry of Defence obviously was a very good early supporter of that principle in terms of obviously getting involved. But that sort of accords with what you've said in the synergy, the way in which there's a very close alignment with the community feel that you have in the army that's extended to people who work for the Ministry of Defence as well. But when you got your qualifications, so you moved, if I'm remembering what you said correctly, so you moved from being a computer specialist to working
civil service computer specialist.
But you then worked so you went from Ministry of Defence then into the private sector, working for the company. And how long were you with the American company for?
From 1990 to 2005.
Oh, right. So 15 years.
You spent a long time there. Wow. Well, you had a long career, didn't you, Neil? Oh, you did.
You saying that after I left the civil service, this thing did play on my mind a little bit. Will I be able to work till I'm 65? Will I be in work till I'm 65, or will I be redundant, or will I be made unemployed? And as it happened, I was able to work till I was 65, and I was quite glad about that.
And when you retired, I noticed here that you said you volunteered with Age UK, and you also have been a tutor to some of their service users. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
The same sort of thing. You retire and say, well, what? I don't want to just forget all my IT skills. What can I do with them? And then Age UK were looking for tutors for, they call them silver surfers. For old age pensioners. So I volunteered for that, and I've been. In fact, I started, with Age UK, that those computer classes. I think about 2006, almost a year after I left the civil service, after I retired.
Are you still doing them, Neil?
Yeah, and I've been been doing those courses ever since.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Am I right in thinking that one of our former candidates, Jean, you tutor? Does Jean attend some of your classes?
Yeah, she comes to. She comes to. As well as classes, we have workshops. And she comes to our workshops. Yeah.
Well, that's excellent.
Yeah.
That's so fabulous, because back in the day I used to work at Age UK, but the one in Hammersmith, and we used to have the cyber cafe, and we'd have tutors come in.
Oh, right.
The tutors would be there to support the service users, and they could bring in potentially their, if some people are not sure about even setting up emails, even just doing things like understanding how to get the phone working. So I thought that was a very invaluable service.
Oh, we do that as well. Yeah. We have a so-called workshop every third Monday of the month at Age UK, Chingford. And the same thing happens, people come in with, some help with setting up their iPhones or their tablets and things like that. Yeah, we do that as well. As well
I have to come to you
as computer courses
for the iPhone support. Tell us.
What do you think Neil, what do you think one of the biggest barriers is for older people in technology? I mean, you've obviously had a great deal of experience in tutoring people.
I think it's a lack of confidence,
Yeah.
It's just that I don't think computers or IT the equipment that we use nowadays, like, iPhones or smartphones and tablets, they're not too difficult to master, but it's a question of confidence. So confidence and unfamiliarity, I think, because they're so some of them have never ever had anything to do with that kind of technology. So for that reason, they're lacking in confidence. They just don't want to dip their toe in the water.
Neil, with the group that you run, how many people in your group, how many people have smartphones and would you say, are computer confident?
Well, they all have smartphones. They have all. I mean, they have all the smartphones and all sort of modern equipment. The kind of personal items that people carry nowadays with them. So they either buy them themselves or they're given them those items by their grandchildren or something like that. So I think everybody that comes to us, at Age UK, they've all got equipment, like smartphones, tablets, but they just haven't got the confidence to start using them.
And the people in the group, the CSRF group, your local group that you run, are those people computer confident, do you think?
In the CSRF group?
The one that you run, yeah.
Oh, yeah. To be honest, sorry, no, I thought you were talking about the people that come to Age UK. No, the CSRF group, yeah, they're quite familiar with them. They're all younger than me, so they...
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily mean their knowledge is better than yours, Neil.
No, but they're always familiar with, the new equipment, the new technology.
Oh, that's excellent. And you also do some work with the local British Legion.
Yeah. But again, just to keep in touch with what's going with my army past, I joined the British Legion, and I attend their meetings, and I don't hold any office with the Chingford British Legion, but I'm a regular there, and I attend all the meetings, and we have coach trips occasionally. Their wives section does a lot of organizing in the way of coach trips and things, So yeah, so that's what I do with the British Legion. Yeah, as I said, I'm a regular. I attend all the meetings, which I feel I should always do. One of the things about British Legion or organization like that is that there seems to be a lot of natural wastage nowadays. There just aren't that many ex-servicemen who, of the age group that usually joins British Legion and takes an interest in British Legion.
So
I mean, the sad thing is, in the sort of 20-odd or 25-odd years or even 30-odd years that I've been with British Legion, so many have passed away, and the numbers keep going down.
It's a problem that's perennial to all of us, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of organizations of a similar vintage.
Yeah.
I mean, we have exactly what you've said there about the decline of ex-servicemen wanting to be involved. We have exactly the same conversations with the decline of ex-civil servants. Largely, certainly in living recent years, is that people no longer have a career for life. Whereas before, they could expect to work their entire professional career in civil service, form friendships, retire at the same time as friends, go into retirement, still having some communication with people.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's no longer the case. And I think, the more organizations we encounter, the more it's still frustrating, but I suppose it's less annoying because that you're not alone. I mean, a lot of similar organizations have exactly that challenge. And in some respects, that's why you've got to try and look at new ideas or new initiatives or new ways to engage people. I mean, it's very interesting, obviously, talking to you, who is a very walking example of someone who is an expert in computing, not afraid of it. Because during COVID, we had lots of organizations were offering, we'll do these online chats, we'll have online speakers, etc. And the collective response from the organization was minimal. I mean, people were not interested. We did do e-newsletters, which people did respond quite well to, but they were not interested in the idea of having like online speakers or all of that.
Yeah.
And it's really annoying because you think, well, if you actually did dip your toe in, you've got a whole realm of possibilities.
Absolutely, yeah, exactly. You know, it is so helpful and enriching. Yeah.
Exactly.
But I think that's about how you plan for your retirement. Because I think what I've, from speaking with you, I mean, we did meet at the reception, I've read your stuff, but from speaking with you, it seems to me that you're quite adaptable. So what would then, well, it does, because you had a career in the army. You then started in the civil service as a clerical officer. You adapted. You said, look, okay, I can see something else. You then pivoted to computer training, engineering. You said, okay, I can do that. You then pivoted to training. So to me, it's about that adaptability. And I think sometimes when you're approaching retirement, it's about still trying to retain that ability to say, look, I can try something. I might not like it, but I should give myself the opportunity to try. And it's okay if I fluff, if I don't look fabulous, or, it takes me to learn something. And I think it's about that attitude, Neil.
Yes. And that is something that's, I've learned as I've gone along, during my career, whether it was in the army, the civil service, Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true.
If you were going to give any advice to anybody approaching retirement, what advice would you give them? What gems would you share? Even though how do we even prep for that exercise? Give us some gems, Neil. What do we do?
No, again, it's a change. So, you have to be prepared to accept the change. And, as I was saying earlier, dip your toe in the water. You're moving into a new environment. When you're retiring, at least you have got the sort of safety cushion of a pension, if you have got a reasonable job, yeah. So that helps in retirement. At least you know that you're not. For example, when I was coming out of the army, as I said, my big worry was, what if I'm unemployed? I have no income. So one thing when you're retiring, you've got that sort of bit of a safety cushion that you'll always have some income. And the first thing, of course, you got to do is to, cut your coat according to your cloth. You got to, your income is going to be lessened, so you got to prepare for that. And by the time you come to retirement, your liabilities are sort of much reduced. You're sometimes, you've paid off your mortgage and things like that. But you have to adjust to a lower income. So the good thing about the good thing about retirement, I would say, is that you're going to have some income in the way of pension. But then you got to adjust yourself to having a smaller income than you had before. And that's the thing. This is where you got to make choices. And some people, downsize. They move out of their house into a little bungalow or something. Well, you have to sort of think of whether you want to do that, because moving is it's quite a stressful thing. So those are the kind of things that you've got to think of. Look, do I want to just sort of cut down on my expenditure, or do I want to go down to to the extent of actually moving out of my house and moving into a smaller house? Because if you're doing the latter, there is a lot of stress there. Those are the things that you have to think about. So there's no sort of panacea for anything. I mean, I couldn't say to people, this is what you need to do.
What about the social stuff, though? The social stuff, because you might downsize, and then you've got a little bit more money when you go to Tesco, but you got no friends.
Yeah, that's right.
So what about that bit?
Very good point. When you're older, it's very, very difficult to make new friends. Close friends. Yeah. I mean, all the.
You don't go around making old new friends when you get to a certain age.
Yeah. So, let me tell you, where I'm living now, right? The neighbors that I know, that I know so very well, they're all the neighbors that my wife made friends with. I'm a widow now. So I only know them. I don't know any of the new ones, sort of younger couples who have moved into the area. I don't know them. I only got to know them through the neighbors that I do know are all the ones that I've got to know through my wife. She used to go and have coffees with them and things like that. So, but when
But
you're
you
open,
bring-
you move into a completely new environment. You can't make those kind of friendships.
Exactly. And you bring up a very interesting point, which we've actually touched on in several one of these episodes, is the challenges if you are on your own and you've worked and you don't have a partner, because you just said, you know, your social life is sort of like benefited by your late wife,
Yeah.
who was, you know, who sort of created that network that you still got some engagement
Yeah.
with.
Yeah.
But if you didn't have that at all,
Yeah.
as you quite rightly say, and as Dee also alluded to, you're making old new friends. It's not an easy thing to do, because most of the relationships you build through your workplace or through
Yeah.
spin-offs from work. And if you don't always take those when you leave.
Mm.
And if you leave them behind, you are then into a whole realm of, well, what the hell do I do? You know,
Yeah.
and major, I mean, we've got some very inspiring stories and very inspiring people in the CSRF community who I think are credit to people who are on their own and force themselves to get out and do things. You know, it might be the easy option to say, oh, well, I won't go there because I'm on my own. But they actually force themselves to go to theatre, go to cinema, or go global traveling, you know, and it's never too late. I mean,
No.
Jean, as you probably know,
Yeah,
Oh,
I mean,
man.
she's seen half of the Asian continent in the last 3 years. I mean, she goes on group tours, but she's solo. And I think one thing we need to do more of, and we are always looking, is to try and break down barriers to people when they do retire. And I think our group network, I mean, I know from obviously, particularly this year, going around as many of the groups as I have, people are generally very welcoming. And I think, you know, but still taking that first step to go into a group meeting is quite a big challenge. You know, I mean, your group, the group that you are now chair of, I remember visiting in my first year when they met in the big church hall.
Yeah, I know. We used to meet there. Yeah.
They had a huge committee, and they used to have this whole
good 30, 40 people. Yeah.
Exactly. And they had a whole long of tables where you came in the door, you gave them your pounds, you bought your raffle ticket.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, you was like running the gamut. Of, are you signing up for the trip? Are you signing up? And they all sat very neatly, being good civil servants, very orderly there, taking their.
And just have a raffle every meeting. Yeah.
Exactly. And that, I mean, certainly that I've met people who have been along to group meetings and have not gone back because they found it quite a frightening experience, or they perhaps felt, you know, there were people who, I mean, some of our groups, love them all as I do, have very precise people always sit in the same place. They always have a particular place they like to sit. I mean, you've actually taken the right route because you obviously meet in a bar. So you've got a much more friendly environment by default.
No designated seating.
Exactly.
No, we could no longer afford the church hall. You know, we had to find somewhere cheaper.
But then a lot about particularly this year, the new campaign we've been doing, which is called Let's Do Lunch, is working on the principle that we don't want groups to be saddled with unnecessary administration. What we want is for them to be able to get out and enjoy the social interaction they get from the group. Everyone has to eat. So by default, having a lunch club is a much nicer option because you can do it. Everyone pays for each other. Pays for themselves. They don't need a bank account. They don't need auditing. They don't need all of that. And they can just get to the nub of it. And I think that's if we're looking forwards, we've of course got groups that still do have committees and do run the speaker program. But I think the future, certainly in the physical in-person groups, is much more along those lines.
No, it's a much nicer way of socializing.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, Dee, have you got any other questions you'd like to ask Neil? It's been very interesting.
No, I just think Neil's been very interesting, and I'm just wondering about Neil's tutoring abilities across a wider group of people. Maybe we could think about that, Neil. That's where my head is.
We need to give us a master class, Neil.
Well, that's what I was thinking. Because I think one of the things that you really touched on, and I think it's really important, is people's confidence.
Yeah.
People feel confidence if they're given the right environment to fall over and be picked up and say, that's a fantastic mistake. Let's do it again. And that to me is what comes across when I'm talking to you. And I'm thinking about our community and how many people in our community would benefit from digital online sessions, because you said to me your group is very much computer literate. Many of the groups may have individuals who are computer literate. So while you were talking, I was thinking about that, and I thought to myself, I'll speak to Dee afterwards and see what we can do.
I think that's a very good idea.
Happy to have that. Yeah,
We've got our first master's degree chartered engineer qualified.
Oh yeah, we could give it
individual.
top
Exactly.
billing.
Thank you so much.
Well, Neil, just before we conclude, just let us say a huge thank you for
Yeah.
giving 60 minutes of
Oh,
your
it's a
time.
pleasure.
And if you just bear with us for me to do the wrap, and then we'll obviously say au revoir. But if you've enjoyed listening to this episode, you can check out all the other 60 Voices episodes on the CSRF's YouTube channel. All you need to do is go to the homepage of YouTube, type in the CSRF, and you will see the channel with the CSRF logo. You can click on that. And if you do listen to one episode, you can listen to them all over a period of time. But you can also sign up to receive notifications, which means every time we upload a new episode, you'll get an automatic notification. So you'll be aware of the fact that we've done that. You can find out more about the CSRF via our website, www.csrf.org.uk, which has full details of all of our charitable services, how to volunteer, and also how to donate to our Diamond Anniversary Appeal. And if you'd be interested in being a guest on a future episode of 60 Voices, then we would definitely love to hear from you as well. And you can email us direct using the inquiries at csrf.org.uk. So until the next time, it's a big goodbye from us, and thank you very much indeed for listening.
Thank you.
The CSRF, the Civil Service Retirement Fellowship, is a charity set up for civil servants by civil servants. In 1960, Douglas Houghton MP highlighted the need for an organisation that supported retired civil servants offering friendship and companionship. 59 years later, we are still carrying on his dream. You can find out more about the CSRF at our website, www.csrf.org.uk. Why not sign up to become a digital donor for £3, less than the price of coffee? Or you may wish to volunteer. Contact us via the website.